Welcome back. Now, from not paying salaries to their staff to not making UIF contributions, the ANC's money troubles are well documented. Soon, the party will have to go on electoral campaign. This requires finance. Where will the money come from? To speak to us on how this situation can be turned around, I'm joined by political analyst Sanet Madonsela. Thank you very much, Sanet, for your time here on eNCA. Of course, yesterday after the announcement that there'd be some packages that the ANC would be offering to the media on a financial basis where media would need to pay, a lot of people reacted saying that this speaks to how deep the financial issues are within the ruling party. What would you say?
Thank you so much for having me. I totally agree. In the past, there's never been any instance in which the media had to pay for elective conferences. But what's particularly interesting is that the ANC has been taking strain over time. In 2014, you would have noticed that they already started mentioning their financial burdens and so on. In 2017, they complained about the fact that they had, I think, just over 500 journalists at the event. And now they're saying that 600 journalists will be attending the event. But what was quite sad, I think, was citing things like giving water to journalists as a reason for people to actually pay a registration fee. So I think that that highlights how deep this problem is.
And of course, you're looking at the fact that this is a party that in July held an elective conference at an expensive venue that they said was expensive themselves during a time when their staff at Lutulia House in particular was striking about the fact that they haven't been paid salaries for 2 months, some of them 3 even.
Yeah, that's actually quite true as well. What was interesting about the last conference that took place is that it was quite different from previous ones as well. There you had ministers and state representatives or public representatives having to pay for their table, which is also something that was quite unprecedented. At the same time, having people strike and protest. But I think that this is not something that just happened overnight. It is something that's been going on for quite some time. You would note that in 2017, the ANC had millions worth of debt that they couldn't pay. They had millions in deficit as well. And this is quite sad that it has escalated to this extent. But I do think that the top leadership of the ANC has like a history of doing something like this, where they would say how tough it is, plead with people to stay with the party and so on. But how are you expecting your employees, because those are employees, to go home and explain to their families why they can't pay school fees, why they can't take care of their children's needs and so on? That's just quite sad. You can't have outstanding taxes of over 80 million rand. You can't have a salary budget where you have to pay over 10 million every month and not be able to pay the 10 million for people's UIF and PIE and so on. So, yeah, I think it's just going to escalate with time, particularly because they don't have a lot of funding coming in as well.
And of course, we remember that there was that new rule in terms of parties having to say exactly who gives them money. And that is when we saw the cookie crumble, wasn't it? When the IEC had to announce to the public exactly who's giving funding political parties. And that's when, like you say, the troubles were there since 2017, but it became this deep and escalated to a point where people can't pay for their bonds, can't take their children to school anymore, and cannot pay for their bills because of that particular act.
But the Party Funding Act is actually quite interesting in that it equalizes the field in terms of political parties. For a very long time, political parties could just have funders and never disclose who was funding them, also raising interesting questions about what those people's reasons was for funding them. But the party fund, or the recent party fund that came into being in I think it's the 1st of April this year, was quite interesting in that if you give over 100,000, you have to disclose. If you are a single funder who wants to give 15 million, you have to obviously disclose, but you can't give more than 15 million, which is a cap which is quite new. And now with the ANC going through the turbulence that it's going through and the need to disclose, a lot of business people don't want to be associated with funding a particular political party. And I think that's also why they have less revenue coming in.
And it's quite sad to see actually a political party that is this old, over 100 years old. But what would you say is their solution? What advice would you give them if you have any, Sanet? Because it looks like the TG first announced that they would be making sure that members pay a certain amount more towards being part of the ANC, but that didn't seem to sort anything out. And now, media suddenly for the first time were told that there's more packages over and above what they usually offer, where we need to pay for those kinds of packages, etc. It's the first time I'm hearing of it in the 12 years that I've been a journalist. But what would you say is their solution instead of this? Especially, talking about these kind of things in public when you're the ruling party, South Africans will wonder what really is happening.
I think the ANC's problems are actually quite deep-rooted. I think it's been years of mismanagement. If you have been a leading party for 27 to 28 years and you haven't been rendering services, you have an overextended budget in terms of the amount of money that you pay people, the number of people that you employ, and so on, and you're just using money and misusing money, I would say, having laboratory events and so on. The people are getting tired and people are not willing to fund. Like, I know that a lot of people suggested crowdfunding, but why would you give to your political party when you yourself don't have? South Africa has large numbers of unemployed youth. We have high numbers of people living in poverty. You have more companies announcing that they're going to be retrenching people. So in a situation like that, crowdfunding isn't a solution. I think that the ANC actually needs to renew its priorities, figure out what is working for it, what is not working for it, and actually find a way to reconnect with the people, because I do believe that they are out of touch with what the people need. And as a result of this, less and less people are interested in voting for the party, less and less people feel connected to the party. And as a result, also because of all the scandals that have been coming out, a lot of people are going to be distancing themselves. So while this renewal project is basically just rhetoric at this point, I do think that it is something worth looking into. And then I think once you have established trust in the public, then more people will be open to opening their coffers or their purses up to you. But I don't think that at this point in time that it's going to be happening. I think that after the December conference, there will be a lot of overspending, even though they're saying that they're trying to stay within their budget. And I think that things are going to get a lot tougher.
And I mean, talking about renewing the trust levels that the public would have in the ANC, who they put in the top 6 in December will probably also determine how South Africans react to them in 2024. For instance, last year, South Africans didn't necessarily reject the ANC, but a lot of them opted not to even go to the polls because they just thought, if I don't vote for the ANC, I don't have anybody else that speaks to me. But the ANC is messing up right now, and I'd rather just stay at home and take this as a holiday. So for them to also say that they want crowdfunding, but having people who told you already during the 2021 elections that we don't trust you and we're despondent about you, means that they're really not going to be able to get South Africans to do the crowdfunding. But it's important who they put in the top 6 in December, isn't it, to see how South Africans react, not necessarily about the positions within the party and who can do what, who can scratch who's back. It's really about 2024.
Yes, it is. There are some fascinating characters, some with, I think, more appealing characters than others. But what I also find quite interesting about this is that the ANC is in financial trouble, and you have the Treasurer General saying that he's going for position in the top 6. That's very problematic. How can you even consider that? I do think that they have to work on who they are going to be sending to the polls, but I don't think that the choices that they're going to be making are going to be the best choices for the country. I think there's a lot of factional infighting and so on. You have a lot of people backing people like Zweli Mkhize. You have a lot of old faces coming back, but you also have a lot of new faces. I do think that they may have to reconsider, but given the fact that the nominations are already closed, I don't think that we have much of a choice. We have to go with whatever we are served with as a
whatever
country.
we're given.
And just hope for the best, yeah.